Good morning. It's a real pleasure to be here again. And today I'm so excited and delighted to be with Gary Levy, who is an educator and is a part of the Dror Israel movement. And without further ado, I really simply want to jump in with Gary into the discussion. Welcome. Gary, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course, it's great pleasure for us. Great honor that you're with us. So can you tell us just a little bit about yourself? I mean, in the sense, how come you became an educator and a part of Dror Israel?
Well, it probably all starts before I even was born.
Good start.
My parents lived in England, and the fairy tale said that when my father went down on his knees and offered my mum to marry her, she said there was one condition, and that was once the first child is born, we make Aliyah and move to Israel.
Wow.
And 3 years later, I came along as the first child, and when I was 4 months old, my parents came to live in Israel. My mum is a teacher, and I grew up in the north of Israel in a small town by Haifa. And at the age of 10, I joined a youth movement in Israel. And from there, I began dreaming of living an idealistic way of life. And the path was short from there.
No mixed feeling, no ambiguity, nothing. You just knew this is the right way for you to live. It's brilliant. It's very unusual.
Yes, I think I come from a very value-based home. My grandparents, my parents, my sisters, my brother, we all found our paths to live a way that fulfills our dreams. And not only personal dreams, but also dreams for what we wish and dream and hope for Israel to be.
Okay. Meaning the social dreams for Israel then?
Yes. Yeah. Each one in a very different way, but very much so.
Wow, brilliant. Wonderful. Can you just tell us what your sister is doing?
One sister is a social worker.
Wow. Okay.
Another sister works in the community in the sports field.
Wow.
And my younger brother did a long service in the IDF and now is a doctor.
Wow. Meaning you're a family of empathy and compassion.
Hopefully.
Doing our best. That's brilliant.
We try hard.
You put your heart and soul in it and it feels like it's working. So can you tell for our audience, which conclude people who are not Israelis and are not, some of them are not even Jewish, can you tell us a little bit about what is Dror Israel? Because not everybody knows, and the meaning of the name, I think, because it's in Hebrew and perhaps people don't understand the meaning of it. So if you can elaborate.
So the word meaning Dror is a deep essence of freedom, and Israel is Israel. But it's named after a Zionist movement that was active in Eastern Europe mainly between World War I and World War II, and unfortunately it was perished during the Holocaust, and we took upon ourselves the name to try and be those that continue the spirit of those youngsters that were idealistic youngsters that were preparing themselves in Eastern Europe to come and establish a Jewish state in Israel. Dror is an educational movement. We today have about 1,300 adults, young adults, living in educators' communities, trying to better Israeli society and promote values of peace, democracy, social justice, leadership, social involvement. And we have a large range, a very wide variety of educational platforms to create these changes in the neighborhoods, especially in the periphery of Israel and the social periphery, and the more challenging places.
More interesting places.
That's
where
for sure.
There is a need for hope, and once there is hope, everything can flourish, I think. Can you just tell us a little bit, because it was very interesting for me, can you tell us a little bit about these communities of educators that you gave us a hint or regarding them? Can you elaborate and tell what is special about them? Who are the people who are becoming,
Yes,
affiliated with this? Yeah.
We're talking mainly about young adults after the army service in Israel, which is compulsory from the age of 18 till about the age of 21. Many of them have the background of the youth movement that I belong to, which is a very large youth movement in Israel, working with children from the age of 10 to 18 throughout the country in informal education. And we establish communities that have a shared vision and a shared mission of bettering Israeli society through education and living a communal way of life. These communities establish themselves and usually go live, as I said, in one of the peripheral cities or towns of Israel. Each community is made up of between 50 and 100 young adults that live together in the same neighborhood or sometimes even in the same building. We may speak about it later. And they are all involved and finance themselves through educational and community work within the communities where they work. So imagine 80 people living in the town of Akko, which is a mixed Jewish-Arab town.
Yeah.
And then one goes in the morning to the elementary school and is a teacher, and one is a social worker, and one has a sports organization, and one does arts and music. And at the end of the day, they all come back to the same building, they all meet. And I think that's something very powerful, not being alone, but trying to create change through a community.
That's brilliant. And these people, how long do they stay in this community?
Well, that's another interesting question. They don't commit for anything. I mean, we're talking about young adults at the moment. They can come for a year, they can come for 3 years, they can come for 10 years, or like me, they can be going for 25 years and hopefully for another 50 years. It's a growing organization, it's a grassroots organization. And what we're trying to establish is a way of life. It's changing all the time because the life of 25-year-olds is different than 35 years old. I can even admit it's different from 45 years old. I can't tell you about 55 years old, but I hope when we sit here in a few years, the movement will grow and we'll have more and more people. So the invitation is for a way of life. People can join, leave whenever they like, as long as they like the idea of living in a intentional community that has a vision and a mission, as long as they identify with their ideals, as long as they want to create change in the neighborhood and towns, they'll be part of Dror Israel.
What is beautiful about this is that you said that people are coming, they're, getting a home, a supportive environment and so forth, but they don't have to commit. I mean, they don't have to make any commitment. And in this sense, this is, for me, is a reincarnation of the name or the mission of Dror Israel, which is keeping the essence of freedom in it. So I think, meaning we are here for you, but it's your decision for how long you want to be a part of us.
And it's not only that, it doesn't matter what your background is from, how much money
really?
you have, what you have studied, or you don't have to take any intelligent tests or anything. All I say, it's always open on 2 conditions: as long as you want to live a community way of life, and as long as you want to create change through educational and community work.
That's brilliant.
When that ends, your relationship with Dror ends, and it can be a good ending. It doesn't have to be people coming for life. People change, the world is dynamic.
Do you have people who went out and came back?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We have people that came and left and
interesting.
came back. We have people that have joined because of personal relationships. We've had people that have been part and have left and are still very much in touch. So all sorts of relationships, and they're all great.
That's brilliant. Wonderful. So, we talked before a few times, and to be totally honest, I was highly impressed with what you do with the schools. And I think this is a very unique concept that you have, and the way I believe it's in line with your values and your aspirations. But I think the way you do it, I mean, you really, the the work that you're doing on a regular basis, on a daily basis, is so unique. So are you willing to share with us a little bit about that? Or a lot about that, if it's possible?
I'm happy to. So when we talk about education, obviously a school is very obvious. Obviously, we're all graduates of the Israeli education system. Many of us are very critical about it. And about a decade ago, we decided to establish a new school. Our first Dror school was in the city of Carmiel, which is in the north of Israel, a city that has a small minority in Arabs that live in the city and around it, a large community that from the former Soviet Union. And when we wanted the school, we went to the municipality and to the Ministry of Education, and it was very clear that they would give us, the students, that there is nothing to lose by trying all sorts of educational experiments, if you understand what I mean.
Wow.
And they gave us all those that don't really attend school.
Wow. How many were they?
We began with 30, 40 students,
wow,
something like that.
Wow, it's still a lot to start, yeah.
Yes, and it was
Which age?
We're talking about high school, aged 15 to 18.
Okay, so it's high school.
I think what we do special is two things. One is how we teach, and two is what we teach.
Okay.
So how we teach is, first of all, with working with the teens from troubled backgrounds, or youth at risk, as we call them sometimes. You have to understand many of them come to us after they've been failing all sorts of schools. Some of them we've literally found on the streets that haven't been physically in a school for months. Broken families, some of them have problems with crime, alcohol, violence, and things like that. And what we understood, and this we brought from the youth movement, is that the first thing you need to build with these children and teens is relationships and trust. Many of these children have a big F on their forward. They've failed in every school. I can tell you a story of one of our first students. He arrived to us at the age of 15. He had already been to 6 different schools before.
Wow.
So the first thing is to build trust. How do you build trust when the child doesn't come in the morning to the school, 8 o'clock in the morning, and that happens many times with these sort of children.
Okay.
Our teachers call them on the mobile phone, and the child answers, and we say, why didn't you come to school? And he says, I woke up very late. I haven't woken up. I went to sleep very late. And the teacher says, I want you to come in. And the child, day in, day out, receives this phone call. And when we speak to him after a couple of weeks, he says to us, you know, it's the first time that my teacher has invited me to come to school, because in all my previous schools, whenever I didn't come, it was the best day for my teacher. So once you build a relationship with a teen, you build trust. Many of them don't have trust in the world of adults. They've been abused by adults. They've been misled by adults. Once you build trust with them, then you can start working on studying, on learning, on things like that. The other thing is the relationship with the family. The parents, we try to involve the parents very much. Again, I can tell you, the same student that didn't wake up in the morning, after 2 weeks that he began waking up and coming to school, and he was, you know, playing his role in the classroom and making new friends and cooperating with his teachers. The teacher called his mother, and his mother answered the phone and said, what's he done?
Wow.
And the teacher said, well, I just wanted to tell you how beautifully he's been part of the class and how nicely he's integrated into the school. And the mother said, it's the first time in 16 years somebody has ever called me to say something positive about my child. So I think it's about building these relationships. Once you build the relationships, there's trust, there's love, there's care. I think you can start looking for where this child wants to go in life, what he's good at, what his interest is. You can't take a child that hasn't really been to school and say, well, you need to study mathematics, you have to speak English. So we give them the opportunity to try animals, to try sports, to try art, to try all sorts of things. And where we feel there's a click, that's where we try to make the child go. So if there's a child that's good at music, let him progress in music. Let him feel that he's successful. Let him feel that he's meaningful. Let him feel that he can do things others can't. This will build his self-confidence. Once we have trust, love, care, and self-confidence, that's an enormous opportunity to start learning, to start trying to work on the curiosity and the self-belief of a child, that he can flourish, that he can grow, that he can study, that he can succeed. And the last stage, and that goes back to the community and the leadership, is don't keep what you're good at to yourself, contribute it to the community. Take it into the community, teach others to do what you're brilliant as. And once somebody becomes a teacher, even if he's 16-year-old, then he's a brilliant student. The other thing I would like to explain...
Can you just tell me what happened with this? I'm serious. I'm a little bit curious about this student. How long has it been already in the movement, in the system, and what happened? I mean, can you tell us about the progress of this specific? Just this
specific student is in the IDF today.
Does he have a name?
Yes.
Okay.
He has his name. His name is Evgeny. He comes from a single mother family. They came to Israel a few years ago. His mother can hardly even speak Hebrew. She's a single mother. He's today in the army, serving his compulsory service to the Israeli army, the IDF.
Wow.
I think...
And do you have still, I mean, do you keep the connection? I mean, is this
Yes. The school very much becomes to be a second home, sometimes even a first home.
Okay.
The teachers that work with the children for the whole 3-4 years, our teachers don't come into the classroom for 2 hours a week and change. They stay in the same classroom. They spend many hours throughout the week with the same children in order to build this relationship. And they very much get to know the children get to know them, and they have a relationship, a close relationship. So our teachers, in many cases, really become part of the families.
You said something which, caught my ear, which you're becoming the first home, or first place of belonging. And I was wondering, if I may ask, probably there are also very basic things like food and shelter and clothing and whatever. And also, once it's becoming the first place of belonging, the real home, how does it affect the working hours of the team because if this is the only place that is really a home, I mean, do you tell them to go home after this is 3:00? That's it.
So one of the interesting things is we understood some of the homes of the children that we're working with weren't suitable, not for the families and not for the children. So when we grew, we today have 2 boarding schools where the children literally live with us 24/7 throughout the year. They go back home, if there is a home to go back to, once every second weekend.
Wow.
And there we provide them with food, with clothes, with medical treatment. Some of the children, we have to start hygiene, brushing teeth.
Wow. When they are already 15?
Sometimes they come, all they have is what they're wearing, and that's it. I mean, it's very difficult, but they grow and they flourish and they succeed. And another thing that's important to know is you can't wipe up out a history, even if it's 15, 16. There's ups and downs. There are successes and there are failures. It's a very, we say something, 1 step back, 2 step forwards. It's not a linear line that the student just, gets better and better and better every day and he becomes a world-known scientist. That's not the story. But yes, they succeed, they go into the IDF, they may go study something, they will be able to carry a steady job, they will be able to create a healthy family. I can tell you a story of one of our educators, kibbutzim, named Eshbal, that has educational kennel. And one of the things that we work with the children there, children that like animals, many children love animals, children in Israel love dogs. So they adopt abandoned dogs, dogs
really?
that have been abused or attacked.
Oh my God.
And for 6 months, they train them.
Wow.
And, they train them how not to bark, how not to attack, how to calm down, how to, they feed them, they take them to the vet.
Wow.
And after 6 months, the job of the student is to find a suitable home for the dog.
Wow.
And during these studies, we speak to the child. Why do you think the dog is aggressive? Why does it attack? What is a good home?
Wow.
And through the process that the child, the student, is talking about the dog, he's understanding things about himself.
Oh, this
Why
is
are you
brilliant.
violent? Why are you aggressive? Why do you
Wow.
get angry? What calms you? If you get food every day, if you're taken care of, what is love and affect all about? What is a good home for the dog? How do we want our good home to look like? So through this, we can do educational and community work. And again, at the end of the year, and it's very emotional, the student goes with the dog to its new home and present
Wow.
it to the family.
Wow.
And again, the relationships continue. Many
that's what I
times,
wanted to
many
ask.
times
Really?
the students
Wow.
stay in touch, and today they on Facebook and on Instagram they post things about the
They didn't
dogs
want
and
to
the
take the dog home to themselves?
well,
or-
usually at the end of the year, they will be going again to the army, so they can't take it there.
Oh, okay,
Another
okay.
interesting thing is some of them are serving in units in the IDF or the police that use dogs.
Oh,
So they're
wow, that's
using the
wonderful.
training.
Wow.
Again, that's another example of thing.
And
That-
then you also create for them perhaps a platform for, a career in the future, becoming vet or working with dogs. Or
Well,
yeah.
another
Yeah.
example, we work also with horses. We have a stable.
Really?
And then
I
at
didn't
the
know.
age-
You never invited me to this table. Okay.
You're always invited to ride. And at the age of 17,
Yeah.
they can take a riding instructor course.
Wow.
And then once they
Wow.
finish school, they are riding instructors. And many of them, and today riding is used a lot to work with children with disabilities and special needs. And then they go into that field, which is really a great, great achievement. I do want to go back to what I said
Yes,
before, one
sorry.
word about what we teach, not
Yes,
only how we
yes,
teach. I said about
yes.
the how, love, relationship, trust, what are you great at, and then give back to the community. I think we understood that, like many people, and definitely speaking here, that the world is rapidly changing.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
We're if 100 years ago, or even when I look at my parents, I mean, they both did the same job for 40 years. I mean, this is not the world these
No.
teens are growing into. And a 15-year-old today, it's very hard to even imagine some of the jobs and opportunities he will have in 10, 12, 15 years because of the rapid changes in technology, in science, and things like that. So we sat down with the Ministry of Education and we thought, what would be future professions? What will be things that these teens will be growing in? And we are today the only high schools in Israel, for example, on Kibbutz Ravid, which is where I live, also up in the Galilee. We have a Fab Lab, which is a maker's place, where we have 3D printers, CNC cutters, laser burning.
Wow.
And the children learn using this cutting-edge technology. And when you take children that are disadvantaged and you put them into this high-tech environment, they feel respected, they feel challenged, it gives them the motivation. And two, it will prepare them for the world that they're really growing into. Another school that we've opened in Haifa, I didn't mention, we have 9 schools today.
Okay, wow.
From Mitzpe Ramon, which is down south in the desert, up until the north. In Haifa, we have a school right on the seashore. Now, the sea is a huge asset. Oceans are a huge asset. Assets, and we discuss, and so we've opened the first track of studying about ocean studies and
Wow.
sea studies.
Wow.
And that goes
He
through...
didn't tell me all of this. I'm telling you.
How do you attract students? You say, come, and
Yeah.
as part of your school lessons, you'll do a diving course, a sailing course.
wow.
You'll learn about pollution of the sea. You'll learn about sea life.
Yeah.
You'll learn about food that grows in the sea. And through that, again, they learn all about the environment, they learn all about the sea, they have a great time scuba diving and sailing, but also doing amazing programs of learning about how to build underwater. Okay, if you want to build a new port today and you have to have underwater constructions, this is something that technology knows how to do today. So they learn these sort of things. And again, so we're giving them not only a good way of studying and a good relationship and a good environment, we're also giving them the opportunity to learn what we hope and think will be relevant for them in 10, 15 years.
That's amazing. Can you tell us about the difference between, if there is, between boys and girls? This is the first question I was wondering because perhaps the interaction is different. Would you like to elaborate, or perhaps it is not? And also, is there a difference between people who are arriving, children who arrive to you when they're 15, or the ones that are arriving, later, like 17? So, can you?
Yeah. So.
Or the north or the east, any kind of difference that you can relate to, or if there is not, it's okay as well.
Obviously, I think boys have more confidence to deal with technology, but we do try to motivate the girls as well. We do have success with that. I think the most important thing to understand dealing with 16, 17-year-old boys and girls is not the professions that they are studying, is about relationships. And I think many schools or many teachers don't have, the teachers aren't to blame. It's always the system. But I think many teachers don't have the tools to discuss with teenagers today what's happening to them in the community, in the society, with their relationships. And if you think that a 16 or a 17-year-old girl or boy isn't influenced by the relationships within the classroom, with what's going on his social media, with who's following him on Facebook, with what has been posted about him on Instagram, you don't understand where these children live. And therefore we decided that every week we will have sessions that we will separate boys and girls for a couple of hours, and we will discuss relationships, how to have healthy, loving relationships. And with these relationships, what for many times are first love relationships, it's hugely important for these teenagers. What is love? What is physical contact? What is safe sex? All these sort of things are also discussed. And as I said, we divide them. Boys go with a male teacher, girls go with a female teacher. And we discuss, and some of the things that come up there are very complicated, of what is beautiful? Why do I dress the way I dress? Why do I act the way I act? Why do I hang out in the places at night where I hang out? What do I expect from? What is friendship? What is loyalty? I think these are the most important lessons that we can give our children. And there you do have to understand that if you want a completely open discussion, sometimes you have to separate boys and girls. And that's fine.
That's fine. I was wondering because Virginia Satir, which is, the mother of family therapy in some senses, and so I was wondering, and she's talking about the family as a system, and she always, she has this notion, which is very interesting, that if someone in the family is, moving and being transformed in a certain way, though the whole family is also changing. So I was wondering, do you also witness this in your, according to your experience? Because you talked about the mother that, she's being called, and what is it, and the first reaction is very negative. And so do you see any change in the parents' attitudes toward the children, toward themselves, behavior in the house, or you separate, and we are only interested in the children, and we do nothing, and we know what happens with the parents is possible, but we are not taking responsibility over it?
So, as I said, our goal is to create change, and you create change through education and through community. And if you have the opportunity to draw in the parents, then your community is larger. Okay. So I told you about the children that were learning about the ocean and pollution. Yeah. So they one day, as part of their social involvement activity, went to clean the beaches. And we did it on a Friday afternoon, and the parents were invited. Oh. So it's a win-win for everybody. The parents
how was the experience?
It was great. I mean, other than there's too much trash on the beaches and too much plastic in the sea. But as an experience, the parents get to know the teachers get to know the parents, parents know the friends. It's a positive experience. They're involved in something that's meaningful. So we try to invite the parents. We speak to them on a regular basis. Our teachers visit the homes, which is very important. I mean, if you don't know where the bed of your student is, what it looks like, is it clean, does he have his own bed, does he sleep in the lounge, does he share their bedroom with another 4 brothers and sisters, you can't be doing your job. So the parents are part of the community. They're always invited. Again, there are ups and downs. There are parents that don't want, there are parents that can't because they're holding 2, sometimes even 3 jobs, but we consider them as part of the game and part of the school community.
We talked a little bit in our previous conversation about what happened with the corona, and I think this was a very interesting time in general. Well, it's still, unfortunately, but can you speak about what the children, I mean, how the pupils, students related to this situation? And, you know, if I'm not mistaken, they did some very creative, you know, work. Can you share with our audience, please?
True. So, as I said before, we try to work with our children through what we call PBL, project-based learning. We're very inspired from the work done in High Tech High in San Diego from that point of view. And we try to choose, or we make them choose projects that tackle real problems in life. And they have to think how they will solve them through a product or through something that they do, and they have to figure their way out, and they work in small teams. So when coronavirus broke out in March in Israel in 2020, it was complete lockdown in Israel. And our students were the only students in Israel that got a special permit to come to school because of the character of the students, and the Ministry of Education understood it will be safer for our students to be in school rather than to be in lockdown in unsafe homes. And working in the Fab Lab with the 3D printers, they understood that they could make anything they wanted. Yeah. And one of the children thought, because the virus, it was clear it was coming through the mouth and the nose and the breathing system, they should try and develop a face mask for the medical people, because the first 2 weeks or the first month, one of the biggest problems was that doctors and nurses were getting the virus and there was nobody to take care of the sick people. So they connected with doctors and nurses from the Perea Hospital and started to try and figure out how to create and print face masks. And after about 10 days, they already had the first face masks, and they took them to the doctors and nurses in Perea Hospital. Then came Passover, which is complete holiday. Nobody went anywhere. Everybody was locked at home. And our students said, because this was a lifesaver, they wanted to continue to come to school even during the holiday. And again, they got a special permit. And the next population they wanted to try and literally save their lives was the seniors, because again, there was an outbreak of the virus in some old age homes. And we know that people that were older carried the virus in a more dangerous way. And one of the children said, well, my grandparents are in an old age home and I'm worried about them. And let's produce masks face for seniors. So that same day, during Passover holiday, they produced 55 masks.
Wow.
They took them to the old age home of the grandparents. They handed them in. And they understood they can produce much more. And over the next 6 weeks, they produced 13,000 masks that were delivered to over 100 senior homes throughout Israel.
Unbelievable.
And
unbelievable.
These children, at the age of 16, they made the headlines of the news, of the TV, of the everything. But when you talk about empowerment, when you talk about change, when you talk about believing in yourself, I'm absolutely sure that these stories will be told by these children to their grandchildren and probably their great-grandchildren, because they'll probably live till about 100 or 110.
Yeah, we know.
And it was just so fulfilling. And they didn't care about holiday. They didn't care about lockdown. They cared about the role they can play in society, how they can change, how they can save lives. And it was an incredible program.
You know, I'm listening to you, and you know, the question that pops into my mind is, why do you only start at the age of 15? Why can't you start at the age of 6 or in kindergarten? I mean, unfortunately, if I'm not mistaken, the house or the broken homes that these children are coming from weren't broken when they are 15. They were probably broken long before. And I was wondering, because you said that you can't, you know, the history still has a huge impact. And I was wondering if is there a possibility, or even if you thought about the opportunity or you know, the possibility of starting earlier at any age, or even as a, you know, as an additional to the school, you know, as a, you know, from lunch when they are leaving the regular school, they'll then come to. What do you think about that?
So I'll share.
I hope I'm not imposing.
I'll share a story.
Yeah.
I told you about the first school in Carmiel that we started just over a decade ago. And one day at the end of the school day, which was very difficult, and most days are difficult, the educators went back home to their educators community and they were having supper together, a group of them. And they were telling each other about the day they had. And one of the girls said, you know, dealing with these children with a history of 16 years of violence, of crime, of abuse is so difficult. And she said, you know, exactly what you're saying. Why not begin? To cut a long story short, 2 years later, we opened a kindergarten in Carmiel.
Really?
Aged 3 to 5. We have 40 children. That was about 5 years ago. 3 years ago, we opened a kindergarten in a neighborhood in Hadar in Haifa, which is a mixed neighborhood, Jews, Arab, former Soviet Union Jews that have come. We have another 2 kindergartens in Rishon LeZion, and we have today 150 children of the ages of 3, 4, 5. And yes, it became, because of a discussion and trying to think how we can improve, how we can better a society. And this is a typical example of what Dror Israel is about. You know, how can we make things better? Begin at 3, not at 16. Let's open kindergarten. So I think
learn by doing it, and you know, and create our methods and through the experience.
The experience is exactly the same. The methods are exactly the same. You just do it with a 3-year-old. You give him love. You give him, let him have a meaningful relationship with an adult. You build the trust, and it doesn't matter if it's trust because you can walk on your own, or because you will have food and you will have clean clothing and you will have games to play and songs to sing.
And also a lot of belonging and empathy and caring. I think this is the fundamental of it, I think, before anything else.
I'm just thinking that when you said the word belonging, I think that's the biggest challenge with a community that we haven't spoken about yet, and that's the Arab community in Israel.
Can I just, the last question now, I want to go there, but also I was wondering if there was, you know, in an ideal world, and there are no constraints and no threats and no problems. What would you wish for this work? I mean, this wonderful initiative of schools and of kindergarten. You know, where would you like to see, you know, Dror Israel in this, in this specific field, like 10, 20, 30 years from now? What would you wish for you and for the movement, of course? I'm sorry, it's, I know, we didn't speak about, yeah.
First of all, I would say I would like this, look, in our network today, as I said, we've got about... from kindergarten to the high schools, we've got about 2,000 children, which is a lot. They come every day, and you see them 5-6 days a week. But in Israel, we have 2.5 million students. So I would say I would like the Ministry of Education to adopt as many parts of this philosophy. I would like to see children tested less. I would like to see children in smaller classrooms. I would like to see children spending more times with a specific educator, not in 40 hours that you study a week to see 25 different teachers. I would like to see study going out of school and into the community. We're not living in a world where the teacher is the authority of knowledge. I don't have my mobile phone with me on the table, but when I went to school, I needed my teacher to tell me that the French Revolution was in 1789.
And it's good to remember.
And
I'm joking.
And I may have been there in my previous life. But today, the whole concept of knowledge is at the tip of our fingers. And therefore, the role of the teacher is changing. Yeah. Schools today are too much... They belong to the industrial era. The school today, the average school in Israel, still looks too much like the school in London in 1870. And we need to move forward like, look how much change in science, look how much change in communications, look how much change in medicine, look how much change in transportation, look how much change in agriculture. But in schools, we still sit in a classroom behind desks and tables, and we have notebooks, and we have a teacher, and he speaks, and we listen, and we have a test at the end of the day. That's part of a world that we're not living in anymore. And I think it's about bringing schools into the community, building relationships between adults and teens. And I would even say not only adults, but seniors. And maybe we can speak about that later as well. And creating multi-aged communities, which can be very interesting.
I totally agree. You can always learn, you know, from this different perspective, and age is a very, very, very important perspective. I want to touch what we start talking about. You mentioned we had previous discussion about the relationship between Dror Israel and I would say the Arabic community, Israeli community, and beyond that. So if you can, and especially in light of the unfortunate upheavals and very severe situations that we all had to tackle, like about 2 months ago,
3 months ago.
3 months ago, but it feels like yesterday in many senses. So I think in light of it, it's going to be very interesting how to see what your thoughts are, or what are you doing.
So just for those that aren't familiar, Israel is almost 9.5 million people today. Almost 2 million of them are non-Jews. And when we say non-Jews, the huge majority of them are Muslim Arabs. So about 21% of Israel are Muslim Arabs or Arabs, which is a significant percent. And when you're talking about creating an Israeli society, the Arabs are there and they're part of it, and we definitely see them as equal citizens. And we want them to be part of the change we're trying to create and the community that we're trying to build. But they have a different narrative, they have a different religion, they have sometimes different customs. And I think the most challenging thing with the Arab community was to build encounters and places where we come together that are related to the deep questions of Israeli society. Not just, we eat your food, you eat ours. We listen to your music, you listen to ours. But asking the difficult questions, how we can live together, where do we overlap and where are we different? And what we managed to do in Dror Israel is to deeply agree on the vision of Israel as a democratic, peaceful and equal society, and therefore the Arabs are equal part of the movement, equal part of the work we're doing, and are trying to better Israel as a whole into the directions of values of peace, democracy and leadership. Sometimes the methods are very similar, sometimes they're a little bit different. We do have issues of religion and respect and culture. For example, now we're in August, many of the children are in summer camps, some of them with overnight, children can go for a week. In some of the Arab villages it's impossible to take a 14-year-old girl to sleep overnight away from home. We respect that, we understand that, and I think that's the thing. The last events in May were very, very difficult, especially within the mixed cities, like in Akko, where we have a community. We have a very vibrant community. A lot of violence, a lot of disrespect, a lot of damage, harm, a lot of broken hearts. I think I always say we've got three options. We can give in, we can give up, or we can give all we can.
Oh, that's a beautiful, wow.
So I think we need to give all we can. I think the hope for peace, the belief that human beings can live peacefully together, the belief that we have goals that are healthy goals that are for a society that lives together,
and flourish,
stronger than anything. We have many, many partners within the Arab community, and from that point of view, I think at this time we need to continue asking difficult questions, not only deal with what's on the surface, because many times the bubbling things under the surface are the more complicated ones, and if we won't solve those, we won't reach anything. But it is possible, and we're definitely going to continue trying building those bridges.
We have only a few last minutes, unfortunately, so I wanted to ask you about what is beyond the horizon. What are you really working? What new initiative that we are going to listen, and hopefully we'll meet again and we have a much thorough discussion about them. But can you give us a hint about what you're working right now?
I think we're working on a few things, but I think one of the interesting things, again, because of the understanding of the needs of the community and because what we've learned about through the coronavirus period is a lot about the seniors, a lot of loneliness. And I think what we understand or what we want to work today is on creating multi-aged communities, the shared co-living. So if you imagine a building that has 50 apartments in the heart of a neighborhood, and 25 of those apartments are held by 60 young adults, young families, children, and 25 apartments are for seniors, smaller homes, and they share shared spaces like classrooms where they can have workshops and things like that, and create a community that shares, again, the vision and the mission in different ways, because obviously a 65-year-old and a 25-year-old are in a different place in life. But I think we see more and more seniors that don't want to live alone. They want to be part of a community. They want to be active. Many of them are retired. They have the time. They are absolutely healthy. They're
at the prime, you would say,
Yes, some of them understand they have at least 25 years of healthy life left. So I would really hope that in a year or two we'll have communities of people from babies to seniors living in the same buildings, in co-living, sharing
if people want to learn more about, for example, this initiative or about the schools, where can they reach you, where they can reach someone else who's, responsible, or give them answers or direct them? Can you give us?
The best way to get information is on our website, which is Dror, D-R-O-R, Israel.org. It's in English, or on our Facebook page, again, Dror Israel. I would say the best way to learn is come spend a few days with us. People aren't traveling as much as they used to these days, but we're always happy. We've developed virtual tours. Wonderful. Now, and
what about if someone wants to, contact you directly? Is it possible as well?
First of all, on the website, my information, is there, and anybody who wants, I'll be happy to connect with.
Two last questions. What about working in communities overseas? Are there Jewish communities or non-Jewish, underprivileged communities? Is there anything, on the horizon, doing the wonderful work that you're doing beyond beyond Israel? Beyond the borders of this very special place that we are living in?
So we have a sister youth movement in the world called Habonim Dror.
Okay.
I think one of the most things...
Habonim, it's the builders.
Yes.
Okay. Builders is Dror.
Which is exactly the same sort of youth movement, summer camp activities, informal education. One of the things we're most proud of is that in the last 5 or 6 years we've had 100 young adults come to live in Israel, mainly from English-speaking countries, Australia, Canada, Britain, the US, and join the Dror Israel communities.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And so, yes, we're worldwide, and people are coming to live in Israel, especially to join this activity.
And you think you can start opening the schools and the kindergartens also elsewhere? That's a tough question.
That's a challenge, but in today's world, it's definitely easier. It's definitely becoming easier. We train teachers throughout Israel, not only in our schools, that take some of the ideas, and we're happy about that. So why not go worldwide?
Okay. Last question, if it's possible. I think it's going to be a little bit personal, so if you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to answer. I'm listening to you, and it seems that your life, soul, spirit, mind are all embedded with the movement. And I was wondering, did you ever thought about how your life, your personal life and your professional life would have looked different if you wouldn't have joined Dror Israel? What is your view on that? If there was, a crossroad, and you could have, using virtual reality and, to see, the alternative, what do you think you would have seen there?
As a child, I definitely would have said I want to be a footballer.
Okay.
And be a sportsman in the best leagues in the world. Probably a more realistic option would be backpacking around the world and volunteering in disadvantaged communities in the world, in Africa, in Southeast Asia, South America, places like that. But I think, and I'll end with that, my attachment to Israel and to the Israeli society and Israeli people is brought me where I am today, and I've been doing this for almost 25 years now, and I don't know where I'll be in 25 years, but one thing I'm sure is that I'll never regret these 25 years.
I'm sure about that. It was a wonderful conversation. I learned so much, and you and Dror Israel are really a source of inspiration for me. So I want to thank Danny for introducing me to you and to all of Dror Israel for the wonderful work that you are doing. I'm so proud to contribute a little bit and to learn from you so much, from you and from all the team and all the people. And we have to finish, unfortunately. Hopefully, Gary, can I ask you to come again and to talk about the other initiative?
Yes,
okay?
It was a positive experience. I was worried about it, but it was definitely positive.
I'm a very nice person. So I want to thank Lior. First of all, I want to thank you, of course, again. I want Gary, and I want to speak, and Danny, and I want to thank Lior, our special, wonderful assistant that is always, he's an expert on everything, so, And of course to Oz for creating this wonderful platform for, us, the regular people. And again, to Aya Shachar, my good friend, that really, came up with the idea to take the Building the Future and show the Israeli way. So thank you again, Aya, for this idea. And see you back here again, probably next week. So thank you again. It's been a pleasure.
הרדיו החברתי הראשון. הכוח חוזר לאנשים.